I'd like to make 4 points to simplify. The case of human gene therapy is an illustration. Of course, that was the experiment done on Jesse Gelsinger. Hundreds of millions of dollars, expectations to cure hereditary diseases and somatic cells. Experiments began in 1980 outside of the United States. Thus far, there have been 14 cases of a rare immunological disorder called SCIDS that have been treated successfully within a few years. 2 of these cases resulted in leukemia from the treatments. That's been, so far, the outcome of hundreds of millions of dollars put into human gene therapy. These are the number of companies over a period of years from 1991 to 2001 that have been formed over a technology that has produced so little. But yet there are still enormous amounts of money going into it. One wonders exactly for what reason. The assisted reproduction industry and the cosmetic surgery industries are large, but they would grow into the stratosphere if everyone believed they needed to use these techniques. This is consistent with certain strategies of big pharma. Break down the concept of normalcy. Everyone, every newborn needs to be perfect. All postmenopausal women should be on HRT. So that's the concept. All people should be on cholesterol-lowering drugs. All embryos should be genetically modified. Just superimpose what we know about the cosmetic surgery industry into the prospect of genetic enhancement run by the biotech and the assisted reproduction industries. The triple win conditions of technology transfer, university, government, and industry, left out the public interest. More conflict of interest, more trade secrecy, more bias, loss of disinterestedness, breakdown of scientific integrity. These are the outcome of the commercialization of the American universities. What can progressives do? Well, I would say we have to begin supporting organizations that want to see a socially responsible science that is not accountable to religious authority or market ideology. There are groups out there, Council for Responsible Genetics, the Union of Concerned Scientists, the Center for Genetics and Society, the Center for Science and the Public Interest. We have to call for the transparency in all forms of scientific and political activity. We have to have public disclosures of scientists who serve on federal advisory committees. Right now there are 2 rules in government. Rule number 1 says if you have a substantial conflict of interest and you're a scientist, you cannot serve on a federal advisory committee. It's against the law. Rule number 2 states that rule number 1 can be waived. And it is waived, and that's the irony of it. So we have to have transparency to find out exactly who is serving whose interests. We have to have public databases for clinical trials, and we have to thank Eliot Spitzer for raising that issue in the state of New York and forcing GSK, a major pharmaceutical company, for withholding important data that the scientific and medical community needed to know to decide whether or not Paxil was actually effective and not dangerous. And now, all of a sudden, there's interest from many communities. Even pharma, the trade association, is calling for some kind of voluntary public databases. But that's not what we need. We need mandatory, uniform public databases for not only the protocols, but we need to have the results as well. We have to begin asking for sector divisions the way we used to. The ethical principles guiding scientific and medical conflict of interest should be clear to all of us. This is the gold standard. The roles of those who produce knowledge in academia and those stakeholders who have a financial interest in that knowledge should be kept separate and distinct. The roles of those who assess therapies, drugs, and toxic substances, and who have a financial stake in the success or failure of those products, should be kept separate and distinct. And the roles of those who assess who have a fiduciary responsibility to care for patients while enlisting them as research subjects, and those who have a financial stake in the specific drugs and therapies, should be kept separate and distinct. We should support the separation of church and state and the separation of church and the executive branch of government. In the choice of scientific advisors, we now have a litmus test if you want to be an advisor in the government, a scientific advisor in the government. And finally, we should call for a reinstatement of the Office of Technology Assessment, which was a wonderful body that provided useful and important information to the public. These are some of the organizations, and this book is a book where a group of progressives got together, and will be coming out. It will be coming out in February, Rights and Liberties in the Biotech Age, to discuss exactly what we have to do in addressing some of these issues. And I'm pleased to say four people who have contributions in this book are at this meeting today. Thank you very much.